Hello and welcome to Author Nation. I hope everyone is doing really well today. I am Melody Ann, your host, and today we are diving into publishing success. We're going to be exploring indie publishing and traditionally publishing and agents and bestseller lists and more, because we are here to guide you towards actionable insights. It's great to listen. It's way better to actually have something you can take action with. So that's what we are doing today, because here at Author Nation, we're committed to your success. You can go to authornation.online to find resources for wherever you happen to be right now. So whether you're sipping your morning coffee or winding down after a long day, settle in as we explore publishing choices to help you succeed as a nonfiction author. I'd like to introduce my guest. Amanda Turner, who also writes as A.K. Turner, is the New York Times best-selling author of 10 books, including How to Be Awkward, This Little Piggy Went to the Liquor Store, and Vagabonding with Kids series. She is also the award-winning screenwriter of Product of the System, the Christopher Sharp story. It is a true story of a gay foster youth who survived abuse, trafficking, and homelessness, eventually testifying on behalf of foster children against Greg Abbott and the state of Texas in a landmark case. Let's welcome Amanda Turner. Hi, Amanda.
Hello, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited you're here. And you just have this like fascinating mix of, humor writing, travel memoirs, a screenplay, which is a very serious topic. So could you tell me kind of what drew you to writing and how you developed this diverse body of work?
Sure. So my father was a writer. He was a very successful nonfiction author. He wrote the two you might have heard of, Midnight Express and Not Without My Daughter. And he has since passed on. But I grew up, I think, with more of a knowledge of what it was to be a writer than most kids. Like when you're a kid, books just appear on the shelf. Books just exist in the library. And I could sort of see one from day one. I could see that creative process. And so it was just more on my radar, I think. I knew that writers were a thing, that they were these creators of these magical things called books. And so I was always intrigued by it. Wrote stories from a very young age. In terms of the diversity of my work, I think I'm a big proponent of just going where you are led, like being open to different forms, different genre, different topics, just be open. I never want to pigeonhole myself as like, oh, I'm a humor writer, I can only do this, or there's so much to learn and so much to explore in the world of writing, so I just always want to be open to that.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. And I have to say, when I saw the title, This Little Piggy Went to the Liquor Store, it reminded me of a story when I was getting one of my children ready for school one day, and I was in a huge rush. And I just like threw everything together and sent her out the door. And when I picked her up from school and she handed me this paper bag lunch that I'd thrown together, it was a liquor store bag.
Oops. Whoopsie.
I was the mom who sent the kid to school with her lunch in a liquor store bag. So when I
That's
read This Little
hilarious.
Piggy Went to the Liquor Store, it really resonated with me. So great title. Thank you
Ev-
so much.
every now and then people are like, oh, is it a children's book? And I say, no, it is not.
Yeah,
No.
exactly. But it so resonated with me. So thank you for titling it that. I love it. So you have experience with traditional, with indie, with agents, and all of that. And I really want to dig into that a little bit. But let's start with publishing traditionally versus publishing as an indie author. Very briefly, how would you define the difference, and how would you advise someone to pick one over the other?
I don't think there's any right or wrong. They both have their pros and cons. They're both very different. If you are a control freak, then self-publishing might be the way to go for you. And I will say that so I work with writers as well, and often I'll work with writers who say, no, 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 I want to traditionally publish. And I typically advise them, okay, if you want to do that, let's set a time limit, 6 months, a year, set some period of time where you're going to try to get an agent, you're going to send out queries and try to go that traditional route. If you don't have any bites by that time period, then maybe move forward with the self-publishing process. And the reason I say that is because you can s you can spend your life trying to get an agent. You can spend your life trying to do that. And I think as writers and as creatives, it's really important for us always to be moving forward. I don't think it's beneficial to limit yourself in that regard to where you're stuck on one project for too long, and then you're losing an opportunity, maybe to be led down a different path, to be working on something new.
Yeah, exactly. And you make a really good point. They're both very different, right?
Mhm,
And depending on your goals, one might be better than the other. It's not what your neighbor did or your cousin's friend's brother, sister did, but it's what fits in with your goals. So thank you.
mhm.
So then the other question is, so let's say I think, okay, traditional publishing makes sense to me, and then people often go, well, I must have an agent, or, they have these kind of myths in their head. So if you do decide to go traditional publishing, when do you get an agent and when do you go to a publishing house directly?
So a lot of this can be dependent on your genre. Like different books are suited for different models. So you really have to do your research and figure out what fits with you as an artist and with your project. I would say you start querying agents. And this is different if you're writing fiction versus nonfiction. For fiction, you often have to have a very polished, finished manuscript, a completed manuscript. Whereas with nonfiction, depending on the type of nonfiction, you might be approaching agents with a book proposal and some sample chapters. So it's hard to give one answer to that because it's so different depending on what your project is. In terms of approaching a publisher directly, there are many, many small presses who welcome that and don't require the gatekeepers of agents. But again, that would depend on if what you're writing specifically fits what they are looking to publish.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to do your research and figure out where you fit into this world and what the best approach is. And it may not be one approach. You may be trying different things and seeing what works for you. Like there's never any one right way to do it, which is why I like to try all the ways.
Yeah, no, and I love that you say, there's the big publishers and then there's the smaller, more niche publishers. And
Mhm.
if you have, a book about knitting, for example, there
Yeah.
may be a niche publisher that's right for you versus trying to go to a large publisher that's really looking for mass sales versus, fitting into their niche and having an audience that follows them because
Mhm.
they're very strong in that niche. So thank you for saying that. I think that's really important. So I guess, if you want full control, you want to be giving away books whenever you feel like it, self-publishing might be the way to go. If you're looking on the other side, if you're looking to hit one of those big five publishing houses, getting an agent might be the way to go. If and I agree, try everything. But if I just want one of those big five, and if you're looking for publishing support, but you're not, you have different goals, you can look at your goals and find a smaller publishing house that might fit into your goals better than either of the other two, right?
There are, with technology the way it is, and with all of the changes in the publishing world, there are so many different variations. There are also publishers you can go to, not vanity presses per se, but publishers which do have editorial guidelines. They do discern who they're going to take on, but then you pay them upfront for the print run, but you have access to their distribution channels. So there's so many different types of publishing these days. One thing I would say is if you're going to go with one of those in the middle, a different model, then be sure to ask around and talk to people who have used that type of publisher, so that you understand the process. Because I see a lot of people get in over their heads. Maybe they don't understand the full financial commitment and what is really possible, and how that's going to work out. A lot of these things people have to learn the hard way, and that shouldn't be the case. So I think because of that, I always encourage people to engage with their writing community. We can learn so much from each other, so much from each other. And um, eh, eh, all the good writers are willing to share. We're willing to share that information. We want to lift each other up. That's really important. So um, do your research, talk to people. And if you're going to go with a certain person, whether that's an agent, a publisher, an editor, anybody in this whole process, don't be afraid to ask for testimonials, referrals from previous clients, and get that body of knowledge before you move forward. I think that's really important in any aspect of business, not just this world.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, the Independent Book Publishers Association has a really brilliant list on what a hybrid publisher should be,
Mhm.
their ethics and what they should be offering. And I'm going to
Yeah,
drop that link for people into the
great.
show notes so they have that. So, earlier we were talking about some people think they have to be traditional, they have to be indie, and it's
Mhm.
a success or failure thing. So I want to know, you're an author who's written a variety of genres, you've done screenwriting. How do you personally define success as a writer?
So I think about this a lot. I think about the concepts of success and failure. I actually did a talk once called Success, Failure, and Other Myths of the Writing Life, because they are myths, they are constructs. For me, I define success as connection. Have you
Mm,
connected with one reader? Not a massive audience. Have you made a connection with one reader? That is your job as a writer. That is any artist's job, making a connection with one person. If you focus on that, then other good things will follow. But I really think, forget about awards and titles and sales figures. Write the best book you can write and make a connection with one reader, then you have been successful in your craft.
yeah, I love that. And it's funny because I interviewed someone recently who's, just a couple of episodes before you, who said, you know what? Take 5 minutes a day, reach out to one reader.
Mhm.
That's it. Don't worry about all these big, marketing strategies.
Yeah.
Reach out to one reader a day and
Mhm.
take 5 minutes. And you were
That's
essentially
great
saying,
advice.
right? You were essentially saying the same thing right now. It's like, look, if you've connected with one reader, that's success. And if you
Mhm.
reached out to one reader a day, whether you connected with them or not that particular day, because we're not going to succeed every time, as you said, success,
Sure.
failure, and other myths. But if you do the reaching out once a day, that's 365 people a year. And as we both know, one thing that's very powerful for authors is you want people to read the book, but we want them to review it and recommend it as well. So when we start connecting with people, that magic can happen, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ask for reviews?
I did in the beginning.
Yeah.
I also read all of my reviews in the beginning. I don't do that anymore. My focus has definitely shifted, and I don't regret the way I used to do things. I don't regret how I do things now, but we're always evolving and changing. As artists, as marketers, as business people, I have always struggled with the marketing side of things. And so now I operate much more in a let things take their course. Let's see where things go, as opposed to really hitting the pavement per se.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Reviews are useful though, right? Like,
Absolutely.
think don't ask
Absolutely.
for reviews to a brand new author, first book.
Mhm.
Reviews can make a huge difference to them. So I don't think you're saying don't do it. I think you're saying at first that was something that I really leaned
Yes.
into, but I do not anymore, which
I
makes
definitely tell new authors now, somebody will say, "My book's up. What do I do?" And I'll say, "Okay, I want you to make a list of 20 people, just 20 people, who you know." I always say geographically diverse. Don't have them all live in your same city because all of this feeds into algorithms and whatnot. But reach out to 20 people who want to support you and would be interested in your material and ask them, 9 times out of 10, especially if it's your first book, people are so happy for you. They want to help you. So you have to have the confidence to reach out and say, "Hey, I wrote this book. Would you consider buying it and writing a review?" And people will surprise you.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. You are a New York Times bestseller, and a lot of people, well, I want to be a bestseller, and especially I want to be, a specific type of bestseller. So I want to ask you, um, can you share your experience of what it's like to be a New York Times bestseller, and how has that changed you, changed your career, changed your authorship? Just give us a bit of that experience, please.
Sure, sure. So, I've had 2 books hit the New York Times bestseller list, and really all that means is that that book had a surge of sales within a given time period. That's what that means. It doesn't mean the book is excellent. It doesn't mean, um, and in in one case, I knew why it happened. I had run an ad campaign that was very successful, and I could see where it happened. In the other instance, I had no idea how it had happened, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy." And because it had happened 2 years after the book came out, so I was not expecting anything like that. Well, eventually I went on to barnesandnoble.com, clicked on humor, and someone at Barnes& and Noble behind the scenes had decided to position my book in between, I think it was like Tina Fey and Chelsea Handler. So someone saw my cover and title, This Little Piggy Went to the Liquor Store, and said, "Hey, that looks fun. Let's feature that one." So I had no hand in that. It just happened. I mean, just take it with a grain of salt when you see New York Times bestseller. Now, for some authors, all of their books are, and they're making a heck of a living, and they're doing great and top of their game. I'm just a working writer, and I had 2 that made it, and I'm very grateful for that experience. I didn't find out the first time I made the New York Times bestseller list. I didn't find out until a couple months later. No one calls you,
Yeah,
unless you're unless you're checking and you're on top of that.
yeah,
And then I was like, "Oh, 2 months ago, I became a New York Times bestselling author. I had no idea."
yeah.
Um, and in terms of what I did next, I'll tell you how I celebrated. I went to an Oktoberfest celebration at an old folks home because that's where I was headed that evening for my husband's grandfather at his old folks home was in the memory care facility. Was They were having an Oktoberfest celebration. So we ate applesauce and sipped grape juice, and there's no big celebration, or it what it means for me as an author now is it's just something that I can add to my name for the rest of my life, right? I,
Right.
I have that distinction. But personally, like I said, I'm very realistic about what that means. That means that twice with 2 separate books, I had a surge of sales in a given time period that worked well enough for the algorithm and the climate at the time. The stars aligned and it happened.
Yes.
Um, I certainly use that in my marketing and whatnot. But I'm a pretty grounded person, so I'm pretty realistic about what it means and what it doesn't.
Yeah. Thank you for defining that way. The way you defined that was gorgeous. I think that will really strike home with people who have anxiety around it or who dream of
Mhm.
it. I think that was really good. And so Amanda Turner is a New York Times bestselling author, and you should check out her work at amandaturner.com. And because she sold a certain amount of books in a particular time period. I love that, Amanda. But it still means something, right?
Sure.
It does mean something. So check out Amanda's work at amandaturner.com. I recommend This Little Piggy Went to the Liquor Store. That's the book I'm going to recommend you today, because especially if you're a mom, this is going to be something that you can relate to. All right, Amanda, you said that you get to write.
Mhm.
Sometimes authors are like, "Oh, I have to finish my book," and just like, but you get to write. So can you tell us about how you get to write?
I think mindset is really important. If you're dreading it, if you're like, "Ugh, oh, I have to write, it's so painful," this is a gift. Like, time is the most precious thing that we have, and so, if you have the opportunity to use some of your time to create with words, that's a gift. You should be excited about that. If you can make sure you have that mindset towards your work, it's going to help you so much. You need to be excited about sitting down in that chair,
Yeah.
not dreading it.
Yeah. And does that mean that you only write when you are inspired to write? Or can you just dig a little deeper into get to write, and what that means for you in your kind of your day-to-day writing career?
So, I think if I waited for inspiration to write, I would have written 1/1000th of the material that I actually have. I don't believe in waiting for inspiration. Sometimes I will sit and I'll have a pen in hand with a notebook, and I'll maybe start writing the alphabet. Like, I just have to get that physical part of me going, and then words will come. Um, but in terms of getting to write, I equate it sometimes to travel. When you travel somewhere, when you go to an airport and you get on a plane, it can be hard and annoying and things go wrong and it's uncomfortable. But you have this opportunity to travel. You get to fly in a magic metal tube to another continent. Like, that's amazing. Most of the world's population will never fly on an airplane. If you have enough ownership of your time where you get to sit down and play with words and think of stories and put them on paper, that is a gift. Like, what an amazing gift that is. If you think, I mean, writers in a way, we're creating time travel too, right? When we can connect with readers and bring them stories long after we're gone and all over the world. It's an amazing magical thing. If you lost sight of that, think of the time when you fell in love with books as a child. Because if you're a writer, you must love books. Like, that goes without saying. But when you get to write, like, get that magic back that you felt when you first fell in love with books as a child. You need to have that same love for it now, and that breeds an appreciation for it. Um, and again, it will serve you so well if you frame it that way. If you have an appreciation for the fact that you have the opportunity and the ability to do this.
Brilliant. Thank you. I love that. And I'm feeling so inspired. So from that, people out there are, authors, aspiring authors are listening. What should they do next? Can you give us some like two or three concrete, if you're suddenly feeling inspired, do this now?
Okay. So first is make sure your mindset is correct. And I'm going to recommend a great book that you can read for that is The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. This is a fantastic book, and it echoes a lot of the things that I've touched on here. But think about your mindset. Take a really hard look at your mindset. What is your self-talk like? Is it negative? Um, it, Instead of focusing on what you haven't done, get excited about the possibilities. Get excited about the possibility of holding your book in your hands. So really examine and actively work on your mindset. That is one. Number two is engage with your artistic community. And I, sometimes writers were reclusive. We don't want to talk to people. And I resisted that for a long time. And then eventually I went and volunteered with the local Writers Guild. I ended up volunteering with them for a decade, and that was so beneficial. You need to be around other creative types. Creative types, we feed off of each other's energy in a really magical way. So engage with your community. And number three, I would say, is learn to be selfish with your time. So right now, block out a period of time that is strictly yours every week. I don't care if it's 20 minutes twice a week. Those are your 20 minutes. You give up. It is non-negotiably your time. Block off your time. So yeah, examine your mindset, engage with your community, and block off time for yourself.
Yeah, and I'm going to just pull those number 2 and 3 together. For example, we have a Monday writing session for our community every Monday, and one thing that people really like about it is they say, "Well, I can tell everyone, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. I'm doing this," and it's not that it's their time. It's like they've committed to our writing session, even though they get to write their book. So no matter whether it's with Author Nation or somebody else, find somebody who writes at a certain time, certain day, every week, and join them, and then tell everyone, kids, partners, that no, I'm sorry, I can't help you because I'm in this group, and they're depending on me. So that's my little 2 cents to that. Amanda, thank you so much. There's just, I think we could just talk on and on and on,
Mhm.
but we're going to have to wrap it up, unfortunately. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great fun.
Good. And for everyone listening, you know what? Everything that Amanda has said, all the suggestions will be in the show notes, books, her her website, how to connect with Amanda as well. It'll all be in the show notes. So go down and connect with Amanda because she's now part of your writing community. And so thank you for joining us today at Author Nation Interviews. And I hope this conversation has provided you with the inspiration it has provided me. Remember to check out authournation.online for even more resources. And of course, we always appreciate your feedback. We appreciate your support. So if you've enjoyed this episode, do 2 things for me. 1, leave a comment. And 2, share it with someone who will benefit from it because your participation helps us continue delivering these insights and the tools you need to succeed. So keep writing, keep creating, and keep sharing your stories, your unique stories with the world.